Quickly before I start, there will be icons in the corner to indicate campaign relevance, multiplayer, or both. I'll also be ignoring spells that require a more in-depth look to get good value. Light, by far the most meta spell, is Net of Amm, great for pinning down targets to get 2 volleys in, but it comes at a high winds of magic cost, especially since you'll be overcasting to hit in an AoE, so don't run other spells with it. You should also be careful to fire after the net lands. Shooting before can make you miss a volley, and you won't be able to fit 3 volleys in anyways, so no need to be hasty and take your time. Banishment is a good alternative though, if you need to clear infantry. It does crazy damage, but costs a lot, so wait for those juicier blobs. Heavens, people take this lore for 2 reasons, the passive and the Wind Blast. Passive is amazing for shutting down flying units, and combined with poison, you're looking at a 40% slow. It also combos well with a spammable spell like Wind Blast, which is good versus unarmored infantry. Now the Overcast isn't more damage efficient than the normal, and it won't be doing that much armor piercing damage despite what the tooltip says. So it's best to spam normal casts until you see a particularly nice target. Other than that, the other spells are much more niche, but if you're expecting a lot of single entity fights, Harmonic Convergence will do. Fire, of course, we have Burning Head, an amazing spell, and also one you don't need to overcast. It does so much base damage, you really don't need more. Good versus archers when cast as they're shooting. This makes it harder to dodge, but if you want to hit 2 birds with 1 stone, cast on the front line to create a gap for your infantry. Fireball is good for sniping low HP lords, but it's also great for sniping artillery. For almost all artillery too, you won't need to overcast to take out a model. Just don't expect a 100% hit rate, since spells will sometimes target the crew. For single entity fights, cascading Fire Cloak is great, but not something you want to overcast, since cycle charging is the meta, and prolonged fights are rare. There's even Flaming Sword of Ruin 2 for ethereals. If you find your opponent is avoiding your units after you cast Flaming Sword, overcasting will ensure you have enough damage to catch and kill off tankier ethereal units. Death. It has Spirit Leech, a good sniping spell for squishier lords, but it's actually best used against cavalry. Even tankier units of cavalry will lose models, which stops factions from healing back the damage. Overall, a spell you don't want to overcast unless there's high value cavalry on the field or a lord you need dead as soon as possible. Aspect of the Dread Knight is new to the scene due to the magic damage addition. If ethereals are giving you trouble, an overcast Dread Knight will help a ton, since it lasts long enough to wipe out a unit before it gets healed. Normal cast is specifically for terror, or if you know you can kill an ethereal unit in under 16 seconds. Let's not forget Purple Sun 2, an amazing spell at deleting elite infantry, but like Banishment, it's very expensive, so make sure it's hitting valuable targets. Metal has 2 very different uses. First is to break boxes with Final Transmutation. It's more efficient when overcast, so most players wait for the perfect opportunity. Best used with rush factions like Chaos, but for more defensive factions, you'll often see Plague of Rust taken instead. Sometimes this is the only metal spell taken, along with the more cost-efficient Lore of Magic. For Plague of Rust, it's most often taken with the High Elves to punch through high armor, and you'll want to be overcasting this as much as possible on units with 100 armor or more. Shadows. With Penumbral Pendulum and Enfeebling Foe, you're more or less set. Take both as a pair for more utility or just Pendulum. Much like the Lore of Fire, it has a wind spell and a spell best used on single entities. But while the Lore of Fire is stronger in the wind spell department, Shadows is a little better in the single entity fight. A good rule of thumb is to avoid overcasting either spell unless you really know what you're doing. Beasts. Best used for Transformation of Kadon, a spell so good that it got nerfed multiple times. but still, it is very much a valuable and meta spell, as the Manticore summon both provides terror and can do a lot of damage to single entities, if you can pin them down, that is. Now, when playing as the Wood Elves or High Elves, the spell will summon an eagle instead. This can be a pretty big downgrade since terror and animations are a huge factor, so even though it's cheaper summoning an eagle, you don't want to take the spell unless it's a Manticore. While Manticore summons are a must, it has limited charges, so you'll usually want to take another spell to use your remaining Winds of Magic. Ember Spear is the best default pick. It's amazing versus all tightly packed elite infantry, and to get good value, you just need a lengthwise shot down a formation. It can be dodged though, so make sure you're either distracting your opponent or pinning down the unit. Make sure to stand far away and fire lengthwise down the formation for best results. Don't count it out versus chariots either, since they can potentially be hit twice. Life. Earthblood, of course, is one of the best spells in the game due to its crazy amount of healing. To maximize its value, you should group your single entities and cavalry together, either diving in on a single target or disengaging before grouping up. Overall, not a spell you want to be overcasting though, unless it's an emergency. Regrowth, on the other hand, is definitely a spell you want to overcast. It's better saved for the late game to restore vigor, but don't feel like it's a must pick. A lot of people will go Earthblood and Dwellers below to have a tool versus elite infantry. It's 100% armor piercing damage and deals a lot of damage over time. Just don't go overcasting it unless you can really make use of the extra slow. Special mention to Awakening of the Wood, which is an amazing spell specifically for its slow, but don't use it unless you really know how to take a good cavalry fight. Now, if you found this useful, a like is the best way to spread the word, and if you want to see more content like this, feel free to check out my channel. If you're interested in seeing the best spells for other lores of magic, subscribe for part 2.